Sure. Thanks, Mohsin, for arranging this. So my name is Morteza. I'm manager of data science in marketing department of Delivery Hero. And here our main goal is to optimize the marketing budget we have, which is around 1 billion euro per year, and spend it in the right channels through different departments. And it's a pleasure actually to have 5 great panelists. I see 4 of them here. And so I would just briefly introduce Cornelia. Is Cornelia also here, or she's not?
We are in contact with her to bring her on board as well. So you start continuing once we are able, she will join the board as well. Thanks.
Great. Then I would start with Jüri, which he is account executive in Fivetran for DACH region. Sebastian, we have from Dataiku. He is AI Evangelist and Strategist. Then from Commerzbank, we have Thomas here. He is Director of Big Data and Advanced Analytics. And from Archroma, we have Usha, which is Global Head of Business Product Management, Data Governance, and Analytics. Good. Thanks, everyone. So the topic that I want to discuss, and actually it's very interesting because we have people from 2 types of different businesses. So Thomas, Usha, and Cornelia, which you should hopefully join. Yes, she also joined.
Cornelia is here as well. Just the name was CS. I couldn't figure out. Cornelia has joined as well.
So they're coming from, I would say, a traditional business, especially for Commerzbank and Vodafone. For Archroma, I think it's like, at least the company itself is relatively new. And Jüri and Sebastian, you work in Fivetran and Dataiku, which sort of, you try to help actually different companies bringing data and analytics into play. So for the topic, the first topic that I want to discuss and get your opinions in is that how data and analytics are disrupting existing business models. And there are different aspects of the business models. You can think from customer acquisition, from customer retention, from forecasting, different aspects of business that getting challenged by data and analytics. And for that, I would first start from the group of, I would call traditional businesses. So for Commerzbank, Commerzbank is a very old company. I think it started in 1870, so it's like 130, 40 years old. And now, how do you, like, from your experience, how Commerzbank is getting challenged by different aspects through data?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, Commerzbank, it's actually 150 years old, so really old. Banking is an information-driven business. Yeah, so we are transforming information, and obviously we are transforming also risks. But in its core, it's that we obviously need always to understand kind of our customer. We have to know our customer, both from a compliance side, from a sales side, but also from a risk perspective. And this is naturally a quite data-driven business. And if you look on the competitive threats that we are facing as a quite traditional business, then you see that arranging, I think, in also in those areas. Obviously, on the sales side, you have other competitors that try to get into the direct touch point with the customer, which is obviously for us very important to have that touch point also for other businesses, because you need kind of the opt-ins to make kind of very sophisticated data analytics, at least on a sales side. For compliance-driven businesses or processes, you have obviously a different data protection level or a different basis on how you analyze that data. But that's very important that you can bring this into the right stream, and that you can then really use the data that you have. yeah, in the different channels. And you also have a little bit the threat, I would say, also on the technology side, also in those compliance-driven areas, because you see some emerging kind of small tech companies coming up that kind of provide real good solutions for parts of the processes. So you own it, not yourself. You basically incorporate it through software that you buy. And so you're losing on certain sides the kind of the direct impact that you have on the customers. Yeah, and the question is in which parts of the process you want to do data analytics on your own, where you want to invest in capabilities on your own, and on which other parts you leave it to external stakeholders and supporters.
Thanks, Cornelia. Vodafone is also, it's, I think, a 50-year-old company, but it's a bit different from Commerzbank because data is actually one of the key assets of the Vodafone. But I can imagine still they are branches of business that is getting challenged by data and analytics. Do you have any example in your mind?
So hi everybody, and thanks for having me here. So actually, no, we're not quite 50 years quite yet, but yes, you're absolutely right with what you just said. Data is one of our key assets, absolutely. And I'm very glad to be here today as the Global Director for Big Data and AI. So I represent the Big Data and AI team. And I can proudly say we have an AI Everywhere strategy, which has been, published into our, reports to investors and shareholders, so we can talk about it. And we believe data has a potential across the whole value chain in our business, be it towards the end customer, or be it towards our business consumers, and be it in the back office processes like what Thomas has just mentioned, like finance and so on, network optimization. So really we use data wherever possible and wherever appropriate to optimize.
But do you have like areas that are like more resistant or like more old-fashioned inside the company, or all the different departments are like more or less aligned with this and using data and analytics at its best extent?
Look, I haven't seen resistance at all. I think we're very progressive and we try and think and act like a tech company. I think we are very good in the customer journey, in retail, in marketing topics, in customer operations topics. We do smart CapEx decisions and other decisions based on that data and AI. Finance, I already mentioned, business, business consumers. And to be honest, we can't do everything. So maybe I haven't seen any reluctance at all, but maybe there are areas where we can still do more. Maybe we just can't double or triple our team. So we really are focusing on the big bets, on the big killer use cases, and trying to scale them then across all our footprint, if that makes sense.
Yes, thanks. Usha, about Archroma, I mean, I tried to do a bit of research. So it's a chemical industry related to like colors. Can you first like give a 30 seconds of background so to understand the context, and then what's the role of data in Archroma?
So Archroma, like you said, it's a chemical industry, and first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm joining from the US time zone, so it's still very early here. It's a chemical industry, and traditionally, if you know, it's a very heavy manufacturing, right? We also have a lot of challenges with hazardous ISO certifications, transportation of chemical materials and other things. I think it does qualify as a traditional industry because we are manufacturing, but I think the data is important irrespective of the industry, right? If we have learned anything from this pandemic, is that the companies that had advantage of the insights, right, were able to really react to the market changes much quicker than companies that were not data driven, right? So I think irrespective of the kind of industry you are, data is so key these days. You can't ignore that. That to me, data is a strategy. But just with the data, you can't do much, right? You have to have insights that can lead into actions. Right. And that is where, I come in, and it has been a struggle for us. And I think it's a struggle for many of the traditional industries. It's not so much the resistance of the people and the organization. It's more about, I think you use the word threat, right? There is this legacy which has been doing things a certain way. And then there's this new way of thinking about how we can utilize the power of the data to get insights and clarity, transparency, right? That you can take actions more predictively. You can't predict everything, but if you can just get a guidance as to where the wind is blowing, you might be able to reorganize your strategy around that. And I think that is where the biggest struggle has been, is how do you create the balance between the legacy, which is very comfortable in doing the way they are doing, much more manual, traditional way, compared to what the power of data. Right? How much more insights can you get into? And I want to point on a few things on the manufacturing side, especially. It's just, any industry which is into manufacturing has the same struggles, right? So to me, it's a threat, but how can we convert that into an opportunity? And what we've been trying to do is a lot of data literacy. Right? It's important to get the buy-in of the organization. If you have the best tools, best technologies, best AI platforms, and if you can't get the people along with you, you can't succeed, right? I think where we are in our journey is that we have a strategy around how we want to bring data and analytics into the organization, but we are at a stage where really data literacy phase. Getting people to feel comfortable that, this transparency and that insights is not bad for you. In fact, it's going to help you be more productive, get to the next level. So that's where we are in our journey right now. And I wouldn't call it resistance. It's more of a fear of not knowing. Right. And I think when we can work with that as a team and try to explain what's at stake. And I think, it's a buying process. It takes a little bit of time, but I think that's the journey we are in right now.
Thanks. Jüri, I know you have worked with many different companies trying to help them in this journey. What was your experience? What are the aspects that you see that data and analytics is disrupting existing business models?
I would say that by and large, like automation, and this is like what many of the panelists have already mentioned, is that there are like already set in stone processes, so to speak, and to change the minds and hearts of folks who are conducting those very manual, let's say, processes. I think it's a mammoth task for any organization and for any kind of data leader, and kind of also being able to evangelize or at least create the awareness around what kind of added value you can gain with, for example, predictive insights, or even kind of moving from Excel to, let's say, BI reporting. I think all of such things are kind of still like very unknown. Also, this is probably widely supported by the fact also that I think that human resource is also like a very big challenge, because in order to kind of get really good people nowadays, and like I think that any company, whether they're a startup or like, let's say, mid-cap company, or like even a global conglomerate, like there's a massive hunt for talent as well. So yeah, like these are kind of some of the things that I've at least observed over the last years that have become more and more prominent.
Great. So you addressed several aspects, from automation to actually getting the right people in. And I think that's also would get very important for companies like in a small or medium size. Sebastian, I think also you have worked with many companies trying to help them on adapting to these changes. What was your experience?
Absolutely. We have talked to so many companies over the last couple of years. And what I can say is that in the end, it's all functions in the companies that can be impacted, and all parts of that can impact the business models. And as we've heard, like there's a wide adoption in like functions like marketing in a lot of different industries, but also retail and logistics. We see more and more of these use cases coming in. And in the end, we're seeing competitive pressure is coming up, as also Thomas already mentioned. and there's quite a risk of like being left behind as a company. So if you don't act, what if your competitors offer a better service, better product, and so on? So that's another aspect to keep in mind when you're talking about these business models. There's a kind of like a fear or risk of missing out, being left behind, and suddenly being out-competed as well.
Great point. So you mentioned this type of like risk of not adapting to those changes. Now, I think we can use that to go to the next question, which is, now, if you want to adapt to those disruptions in your business, what are the potentials, but at the same time, what are the risks that you see? So for that, probably I would let one of Cornelia, Thomas, or Usha answer. So Cornelia, go ahead.
I think it resonated very much what Sebastian and Jüri just mentioned. I think a potential is really the automation, which is one topic I'm heavily working on. I really try and automate end-to-end wherever possible and appropriate, and take the human out to reinvest them in other areas in terms of, our data scientists reducing manual work wherever this makes sense and speeding up things. A second potential and risk at the same time is really having the right team. I'm really proud of our team. We have done a lot around this, not just in our typical use cases, but also in the area of AI for social good. And we are sitting on amazing data, which makes us very attractive, but companies who don't have that amazing, huge, massive data sets, or who don't give a purpose to their teams, are probably facing difficulties in the war of talent. So that absolutely resonated with me in terms of it can be a double-edged sword in terms of a potential or a risk if you don't manage it properly. And another challenge I would mention is coming from a company that is not a startup but has a massive footprint, is really topics like data quality, data standardization. That really is a very big topic in order to be able to build use cases fast and then scale them worldwide.
A great point. So like on these old businesses, you have legacy of data getting collected since several years, and many of those new technologies, they just come now or a few years, bringing everything and the migration, and then migration after migration, because in 3 years or 4 years after that, again, there are new technologies coming up. That's also one of the potentials and at the same time risks. Thomas or Usha, do you have also faced that like any kind of risk and also potentials when you want to adapt to the new threats, what you called, Usha?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is, I think you all have, fully aware of that the great supply chain challenge, right, that the world is facing. And I think, to me, that's a very good example. If there was a way to model that, if there was a way to create indicators with the pandemic, right? And I look at all of these data analytics companies out there. Many of them are participating here, that not one company came with any such prediction, right? We all work with so much data, right, across. We have been collecting data during pandemic, how organizations are working, and I've been following many of these big consulting companies and all of the reporting that they have done, but there was not enough. There was a lot of indicators, right, that you're expecting inflation. We're already seeing challenges in the supply chain. But what has hit us now, right? And I think that one of the biggest threats is, as an industry, right, not just for the organization, is because now it's become a global in nature, right? It's impacting all of us, all industries, right? Companies are not able to get raw materials sometimes. It's impacting the production capabilities. And ultimately, we come to the B2C market, you're seeing that the consumers are paying heavy prices for that, right? So my big question that I have in general is that what is this data analytics and AI companies that are promoting these solutions, what are they doing to provide more insights to the industries, right? How do they play that role? As an organization, we're depending on that kind of inputs, right? Because when we go with a platform to build an enterprise data analytics, there's a lot of external data inputs as well. And what I see these days in the industry is that for us, in our company, that we are very inward. We are looking at the data that we have, but to be able to connect with the industry indicators, there's not much out there that currently makes it easier, right? That itself is an initiative itself. How do you link with external data to create your predictive models, right? So that to me is a threat in the sense that we are struggling, right? Because to be able to manage the supply chain and reduce the disruption that is being caused, data could be very powerful, right? But we have challenges that to get to that decision point, even with all of the amount of data that we have. If the organization understands the value, what it can drive, and I think the risk is less, what Cornelia and you were saying about the risk of the organization, right? But we need to have that. And I think the current tools and technologies, as advanced as they are, we are still not working cross-industry collaborative way, right? To truly make a difference. Everybody's siloed approach, right? Every company does their part. But I think the true value for the data and analytics and AI comes into play in automation when you have cross collaboration across industries and businesses. To me, otherwise, it's just another wave of technological wave, the way I look at it with this wave. Yeah.
I fully agree with you, Usha. And if we see that soon 70% of the world population will live in the large cities, I do think that topics like smart cities can only be worked on in an optimum way with cross collaboration. So if we really want to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce traffic jams, and at some point all these self-driving cars are coming, maybe first not in Europe but in other markets, we need that cross collaboration. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to directly jump onto that because I completely agree. Like that's only if we work together in different functions, different industries, we can actually solve some of the biggest problems. And also, Cornelia, and your point about like lack of talent is yet another one I want to make a point about. That's because there's an opportunity to involve your business experts in creating value within the organization as well. If you just involve like little silos of your data scientists, like trying to build solution, let's be realistic, it doesn't scale. You won't find the people and you won't get the impact that you can get if you involve the entire organization. Your business experts know the best about, let's say, the supply chain issues that you just mentioned, Usha. It's involving them in building a solution will surely massively increase the impact of these solutions.
Yeah, we do that.
And Sebastian, that's exactly what we are doing now. And that's very point because, we have data scientists in place, right? But that's not going to drive this. It's the business users who have to be part of the solution creation. And that's a tough journey. That's not an easy journey, because that's where you bring the legacy and this analytics into play. So fully on page with that. Yeah.
And talking about the risk, there's also a flip side. If you involve the entire organization, there's a risk if you do it without the governance. So if you try to scale, there need to be systematic processes in place to monitor these individual projects and use then data science and so on to ensure the high quality of the models that are rolled out. Because the question suddenly after POC comes, how do you maintain a solution over the entire life cycle? How do you bring it in production? How do you monitor performance? Because these are the more advanced questions that then suddenly come into place.
Yeah, we're doing that directly with Google, as you probably have read. So data, that's one of the biggest topics of our future is automating our own ways of working, and we are investing a lot in MLOps with Google directly. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks. I think very interesting points, and probably recently we have all heard about what happened to Zillow, one part of the company. I think like 1/4 of company just they laid off and they closed because they were relying on data science to predict the house pricing, and they had a huge loss and they just closed like a huge part of the business. So automation, as you said, is part of the potential, but at the same time it comes with a risk. Probably before jumping to the next question, Thomas, do you have also like experience with, because I can imagine also in banking, you have the potential, but at the same time, you have also the risk of like adapting to new technologies. I know there are a lot of regulations on banking to like making decisions, but do you have also a feeling about like how does it work for Commerzbank on adapting like what is like all these fintechs are doing and taking faster credit decisions online without going through like all the paperwork?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, process automation helps both for the customer journey, but also I think it helps greatly internally, also for colleagues internally to focus on really interesting tasks. Yeah, so to get rid of some of the uninteresting process steps that can be really automated, and I think that's very important also for kind of talent management within the bank. And I think on a risk side, obviously, as a bank who is also globally active, obviously a cloud transformation, you have not only GDPR as a regulation framework, you have